In the hospital. They called me the old nuisance. Then the doctor said, "Ma'am, you need to hear this about your son." I woke to a hard white light pressing against my eyelids, the kind of brightness that does not belong to any room in my house. For a moment I thought I was dreaming, because my body felt too heavy to be mine, and my mind felt like someone had shaken all the memories loose. Then the cold edge of a metal rail touched my arm, and I realized I was lying in a hospital bed. I did not know how I had arrived here. I did not remember calling anyone. My head ached sharply at the back, and my left arm throbbed as if someone had struck it with a hammer. When I tried to lift it, a streak of pain shot across my shoulder, and the bruises revealed themselves like purple shadows. Before I could piece anything together, I heard a voice just outside the curtain. A male voice. Familiar. Far too familiar. My son, Evan. He was not worried. He was not frightened. He was laughing. The casual, bright kind of laugh he only used when he believed he had an audience who admired him. "Yeah, my mom is here again. She is basically an old nuisance." A young woman giggled softly. She was a nurse, from the sound of her shoes tapping against the linoleum. Evan took her laughter as encouragement, and his tone grew louder, bolder, crueler. "She always falls, cries, panics. She is helpless. Honestly, I basically raised myself." Her laughter deepened. Evan fed it like a performer hungry for applause. "If she wants to rot here, let her. I have things to do. She is not my problem every time she decides to get dramatic." The words did not merely sting. They hollowed something inside me. I lay still, my eyes barely open, listening to my own son describe me as if I were a broken tool someone should throw out. I wanted to clear my throat, to tell him I was awake, to make him see me as a human being again, but the shame pushed the air back down my chest. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the moments before the brightness, but everything blurred. I reached for my phone with the hand that hurt less and found it on the side table. The screen was cracked, and the time told me I had been unconscious for longer than I wanted to imagine. Before I could unlock it, the curtain slid aside and revealed my neighbor, Grant. He looked relieved when he saw me awake, though his eyebrows rose with concern. "Lillian, thank God," he said. "You fell down your stairs. I heard the crash through the wall and found you at the bottom. You were not moving. I called for help and rode with you here." His words felt heavy and slow, because they filled in the blank space I feared. I had fallen. I had hit my head. I had come close to something far worse. And the person who saved me was not my son, not my family, a neighbor. Grant placed a gentle hand on the rail. "You scared the life out of me. The doctors said you might be confused when you woke up." I thanked him, though my voice came out thin. Behind him, Evan still flirted, unaware that the woman who gave him life had nearly lost hers hours earlier. When Grant stepped aside to give me space, I finally unlocked my phone and dialed my daughter-in-law, Layla. I needed someone who belonged to me, someone who should have cared. She answered by snapping, "What now?" "Layla," I whispered. "I am in the hospital. I fell. She interrupted with a sharpness that carved straight through my ribs. "Rot in the hospital if you want. Stop bothering us." The line went dead. I stared at the phone until the screen dimmed, feeling something cold spread through my chest. Not the physical cold of the hospital sheets, a deeper cold, the kind that settles when you realize the people you love did not hesitate to cast you out of their lives. Grant squeezed my shoulder gently before leaving. "If you need anything at all, I am right here." When he walked away, the room quieted, and I heard Evan once more, outside the curtain, lowering his voice so he could sound impressive again. "Yeah, she will be fine. She always makes things dramatic. I do not let it affect me." He had no idea I was listening. He had no idea how close I had come to losing consciousness forever. And he had no idea how much those words would echo inside me long after this day ended. I lay there, bruised, alone. And for the first time in my life, I wondered if my son had ever truly known me at all. People often imagine cruelty as something sudden, a storm that arrives without warning. But in my life, cruelty came quietly, in small fragments, slipping into the spaces where love used to be. I did not realize those fragments were reshaping my son until the boy I raised had nearly disappeared. When Evan was little, he was gentle enough to soften even the hardest days. He wrapped his arms around my waist during thunderstorms and whispered, "You are the safest place I have, Mom." He showed me every drawing, begged me not to work late, and held my hand until he fell asleep. After my husband died, it was just the two of us, and I carried our life forward with exhaustion and devotion. I cleaned houses, stocked shelves, served tables, whatever kept a roof above us. Evan watched me limp home after double shifts and used to say, "One day, I'll take care of you the way you took care of me." I believed him, but everything began to change the day he met Layla. She was beautiful, polished, and dangerous in the way that ambition wrapped in a smile can be. She shook my hand firmly, too firmly, and scanned my modest home with eyes that judged every corner. Later that night, I heard her whisper to Evan, "Your mom is holding you back. Cut the cord." Her tone wasn't advice, it was strategy. At first Evan laughed. He had always loved me openly. But Layla repeated those words again and again, carving them into him. A real man puts his wife above everyone. Your mother keeps you tied to who you used to be. She did not want him to grow, she wanted him uprooted. Slowly, painfully, Evan changed. He began dressing differently, speaking differently, acting as if he had grown up wealthy instead of watching me clip coupons every Sunday. When he earned more money, he never said, "We did it." Instead, he avoided being seen with me, embarrassed by my thrift store dresses and old car. He stopped bringing friends over. "It doesn't look impressive," he muttered once. Layla fed this shame like fuel. She told him emotional closeness to a mother was weakness. She told him his past was a prison. And little by little, Evan believed her. He stopped calling during lunch breaks. Stopped visiting on weekends. The first birthday he missed felt like a small tear in my chest. The years that followed turned that tear into a quiet wound. They only came when Layla wanted something: money, errands, childcare, and always left before dinner. Evan's hugs became stiff pats, as though touching me was something he had outgrown. I tried to reach him, to remind him of the boy he once was. "Evan, you used to tell me you'd take care of me," I said softly once. He shrugged. "People grow up, Mom. I can't be responsible for your life." His voice was not his own. It was borrowed from Layla. But the hardest wound wasn't his distance, it was his rewriting of our history. He told people he had raised himself. He described me as fragile, emotional, scattered. He erased the nights I held him through fear, the mornings I worked until my hands bled so he could have shoes that fit. He replaced the truth with something easier, a version of himself that owed me nothing. Cruelty did not arrive overnight. It arrived in choices, small, selfish ones, he made again and again, until the boy who once clung to me became a man who flinched at being associated with me. By the time I heard him laughing with that young nurse, calling me an old nuisance, the transformation was complete. The child I raised was gone, replaced by someone who valued appearances more than memory, pride more than love, and convenience more than the woman who built his entire foundation. And yet the deepest truth was this: I had lost him long before the hospital, I just hadn't wanted to see it. The first time I tried to sit up, my vision blurred so sharply that the room bent sideways. A nurse rushed over and pressed a hand to my shoulder, guiding me back down. Her expression was polite, but there was a faint impatience in it, the same kind people use with someone they have already decided is exaggerating. "You took a fall, Mrs. Lillian," she said. "You hit your head pretty hard. You need to move slowly." I swallowed, tasting metal in the back of my throat. "How bad is it?" I whispered. Before she could answer, a doctor entered with a clipboard tucked under his arm. He gave me a quick, practiced smile, as if checking a box on a form. "You have a mild concussion and some bruising," he explained. "No internal bleeding, no fractures. You were lucky this time." "This time," I repeated softly, though I did not remember falling before. He continued matter-of-factly, "Your neighbor told us you were unconscious when he found you. He came in with you." There was no family member present. No family member. The words struck harder than the fall. I looked past the doctor toward the hallway, hoping Evan might appear suddenly guilty, apologetic, concerned. But instead, I heard his laughter again, loud, carefree, as if he were standing in a bar, not 6 feet from his injured mother. The doctor cleared his throat and glanced toward the sound. "Is that your son?" he asked. There was no warmth in his tone, only a thin curiosity laced with judgment. "Yes," I answered, though the word felt foreign. He hesitated, then said, "He told the staff you tend to be dramatic about minor injuries, so some of the team assumed you may have overreacted." Overreacted. I had fallen down a flight of stairs, lost consciousness, been carried by a neighbor, and awakened alone. Overreacted. Something inside me tightened, not anger exactly, but a deep ache that felt older than my bones. The doctor finished checking my reflexes and started to leave. "We will keep you for observation until tonight," he said. "If everything is stable, you can go home after." I nodded, though I was not sure I wanted to go home. Not if home meant returning to the same people who let me lie unconscious without a second thought. After he left, I lay quietly, listening to the muffled sounds outside my room. Nurses discussing schedules, a machine beeping steadily, and Evan laughing again. He had not come in once to check on me. He had not asked if I was awake or in pain or frightened. He was still performing for the nurse he had been flirting with earlier, talking about gym routines, travel, his busy life, as if being here was an inconvenience he was handling out of pure generosity. A few minutes later, Evan finally pushed through the curtain. He looked at me, then at the monitor, then back at me with mild annoyance, like a man checking on a car left idling. "Why do you always need attention?" he asked flatly. "You scared everyone for no reason." I stared at him. The words did not match the moment. They were not the words of a worried son. They were the words of a man inconvenienced by someone else's survival. "I fell," I said softly. "I did not call anyone. I did not ask to be brought here." He shrugged. "Grant made it sound like you were dying. Honestly, you really need to stop making everything a crisis." The same boy who once cried when I scraped my hand on a broken dish now stood beside my hospital bed, irritated that I was not injured in a more convenient way. I opened my mouth to tell him how much pain I was in, how frightened I had been when I woke alone, how ashamed I felt hearing him dismiss me to strangers. But the words froze. If he had cared, he would not have needed me to explain. He pulled out his phone while standing beside my bed and began checking messages. "I need to go soon," he said. "Layla is mad that I am even here. She thinks you do this to manipulate us." Manipulate. The word pierced deeper than any bruise on my body. I had spent years shrinking myself so Evan would not feel burdened by me. I had kept my problems quiet, kept my worries private, kept my loneliness hidden behind gentle smiles. And now he believed I fell down a staircase to gain attention. A nurse entered to check my vitals, but her eyes flickered toward Evan with an awkward smile. He straightened his posture and acted concerned, placing a hand on the rail of my bed. "She just gets overwhelmed," he told her, shaping himself again as the patient, long-suffering son. "She panics easily." The nurse nodded sympathetically, though she avoided looking directly at me. Her expression softened toward him, hardened toward me. His performance had succeeded. Even the staff now saw me as unstable, overly emotional, troublesome. When she left, Evan slipped his phone back into his pocket. "Just stay calm, all right," he muttered. "I do not need any more drama today." Drama. My fall. My concussion. My bruises. Drama. He walked toward the door without waiting for my response. "I will check on you later, I guess," he said, though we both knew he would not. And just before the curtain closed behind him, I watched his face arrange itself into the charming smile he used for the nurse, the smile he no longer used for me. The room fell quiet again. I stared at the ceiling, feeling smaller than I had ever felt in my life. The pain in my body was sharp, but the pain in my heart was deeper. Evan did not see me. Layla despised me. The hospital staff believed their version of me. And as I lay there, alone in a place meant to offer healing, I realized something devastating. Nothing hurts quite like being treated as a burden by the child you raised with every piece of yourself. I dozed off for a moment before a low, weighted murmur drifted from the hallway. The hospital had grown quieter, but something in the doctor's tone snapped my mind awake. The patient has advanced lung lesions. Stage 3 lung cancer, he said. We need immediate follow-up. The words slid beneath my skin. Lung cancer. Stage 3. I did not understand why they shook me. I had no lung issues. Then I heard a sharp, familiar inhale. Evan. For a heartbeat, he sounded like the frightened boy he once was. But the softness vanished. Of course she would do this now. What a burden, he muttered. The cruelty hit harder than my fall. My son heard the word cancer and felt annoyance, not fear. Burden. Always a burden. I shifted slightly, and Evan's footsteps moved closer. He didn't enter. He stood just outside my door, breathing hard, whispering to himself, angry, inconvenienced, and utterly unaware the diagnosis he feared wasn't mine at all. She cannot do this to me. Not now. My life is finally stabilizing. I have a lot going on. She cannot drop something like this on us. On us. Not on him. On his plans. On his schedule. His voice hardened as he exhaled sharply. She always needs something. Always. He sounded more angry than afraid, more inconvenienced than heartbroken. He was not a son terrified of losing his mother. He was a man irritated that reality could disrupt his comfort. He stormed away before I could call out or correct him, his shoes striking the floor in a stiff, angry rhythm. I lay still, swallowing the ache slowly rising in my throat. It hurt to hear him say those words, but it hurt even more knowing he believed them without hesitation. If he thought I was dying, his first thought was how difficult it would be for him. Not once did he ask himself whether I was frightened. Not once did he ask if I needed him. Not once did he think of the years I spent stitching stretch after stretch of my life into his. I looked toward the hallway again, but the voices had faded. The doctor had moved on to another room. I wanted to tell myself Evan had simply misheard, simply panicked, simply reacted poorly, but deep inside, I knew the truth. This was who he had become. Compassion no longer lived in him. Layla had not created the cruelty, she had only encouraged the one that already existed, dormant and waiting to be fed. For a few minutes, silence settled again. Then the same doctor walked past my door, flipping through a chart. He did not stop, but the tag clipped to the folder caught my eye. Evan Smith. Date of birth, 1988. My breath faltered. Evan. They had been talking about Evan. The cancer was his. The lesions were his. The diagnosis belonged to him, not me. He had misheard everything. He had assumed the worst and placed that weight on me. He had believed I was the patient with cancer because in his mind I was always the sick one, the weak one, the nuisance, the obstacle. And in assuming so, he had revealed his deepest truth. He resented the idea of caring for me, even at the end of my life. I felt no triumph in discovering the truth. Only a hollow sadness. I had wished, somewhere deep inside, that if a moment like this came, he would show even a sliver of the tenderness he once carried. But instead he showed only frustration, resentment, inconvenience. He feared losing comfort, not losing me. A nurse came in shortly afterward to check my vitals. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Lillian?" she asked. I studied her eyes, remembering how she had laughed earlier when Evan mocked me. There was no laughter now, no judgment, only routine politeness. "I am all right," I said quietly. "Just tired." She nodded and adjusted the monitor. "Your son looked concerned just now," she added absent-mindedly. "He rushed past the station. Concerned." The word almost made me laugh. He was not concerned for me. He was horrified at the idea that his life might be altered, that he might have to care, even briefly, for the woman who had carried him through every dark season of his childhood. After the nurse left, I lay still, staring at the ceiling as the truth settled deeper. Evan believed I had cancer. He believed I would soon need him, and his reaction was resentment. I did not know yet how he would react when he discovered the truth that the diagnosis was his, not mine. That he had walked past a conversation about his own body, his own lungs, his own prognosis. But I knew this much. His cruelty would not go unanswered by fate forever. Life has a way of returning the echoes we send into it, and Evan had just sent out an echo darker than he realized. The hallway outside my room grew quieter, as if the entire floor had exhaled at once. A few minutes passed before the curtain slid open again, and the same doctor who had spoken earlier stepped inside. His expression had changed. The professional calm had softened into something gentler, something cautious. He looked at me the way someone looks at a person who is about to hear news that will divide their life into a before and an after. "Mrs. Lillian," he said, "could you come with me for a moment? I would like to speak to you in private." His tone made my stomach twist. I nodded slowly, letting him help me off the bed. My legs trembled, but not from the fall. The walk down the hallway felt longer than it actually was. Every step echoed with the memory of Evan's words, the contempt dripping from his voice when he believed I was the one with cancer. The doctor led me into a small consultation room and closed the door behind us. He motioned for me to sit. I did. My hands folded in my lap the way they had during every difficult moment of my life. He took the seat across from me and placed a file gently on the table between us. "Ma'am," he said, "you need to hear this about your son." My breath halted. The room felt suddenly smaller. He opened the file. "Your son is the patient with lung lesions. The diagnosis we discussed in the hallway was his, stage 3 lung cancer, not yours." The words struck with the force of a blow. I blinked slowly, trying to make sense of them. My heart beat once, then again, each thud sending a tremor through my chest. For a moment I could not speak at all. "Evan," I whispered, "are you certain?" He nodded. "Absolutely certain. The scans and the biopsy confirmation are his. There is no mistake." I pressed my fingers against my lips. The room swayed around the edges. A moment earlier, I had been trying to understand how my son could resent me for being sick. Now I understood an entirely different truth. The resentment had come from a misunderstanding so profound that it revealed the condition of his heart. He believed I was dying, and his first instinct was annoyance. The doctor continued gently, "We have not informed him yet. He left the imaging department before we could review the results with him. Your neighbor brought you in, and your son arrived separately, so the intake process was scattered." I nodded mechanically. My mind was still trying to hold the weight of the revelation. Evan did not know. He had no idea the diagnosis belonged to him. The doctor folded his hands. "I brought you in here because you are listed as his emergency contact, and because, as his mother, you deserve to hear the truth before he does." I closed my eyes. I wished, for a moment, that I could step back into the time when Evan was small and ran to me after scraping his knee, trusting me with his pain. I wished I could hold him and tell him he would be safe. But the boy I remembered had grown into someone who laughed while humiliating me, someone who told strangers I was a burden. The doctor studied my face. "You seem overwhelmed. Do you have someone who can support you through this?" I shook my head. "No, not really." He hesitated, choosing his next words carefully. "I know this must be difficult. The relationship between you two seems complicated, but I want you to understand that lung cancer at this stage is serious. We will begin treatment planning immediately, but he will need emotional and practical support." I let out a brittle laugh, though there was no humor in it. "Support," I said. "He has not offered me a kind word all day. He told a nurse I was a nuisance. He told her I made things dramatic." I paused. "When he thought I was the one with cancer, he called me a burden." The doctor's eyes softened. He did not speak right away. Perhaps there was nothing to say. I looked down at my bruised hands. "I do not know whether to tell him," I admitted. "I do not know if I should be the one to break this open." "That decision is yours," the doctor said quietly. "But regardless of what he has said or done today, he deserves to know the truth about his health. And you deserve time to process this without feeling pressured." I nodded again. My pulse throbbed behind my eyes. Grief was not the right word for what I felt. It was not grief yet. It was something tangled between sorrow and exhaustion, tied with a thread of disbelief. Through the thin door, faint laughter trickled from the hallway. Evan's laughter. He was still talking to someone, probably still pretending to be important, still shaping a version of himself that fit better than the truth. He was boasting about his life, while his own future was fracturing in the next room. My chest tightened as the doctor continued, "We will bring him in shortly. Before we do, I need to know if you want to be present for the conversation or if you prefer we speak to him alone." I opened my mouth, but the answer did not come. I did not know what the right thing was. I did not know if my presence would comfort him or push him deeper into denial. I did not know if he would blame me, or accuse me, or walk away, as he had walked away from every emotional truth in his life. All I knew was this: the world had just shifted under our feet, and neither of us was ready. The doctor gave me a few moments to breathe. When I finally lifted my gaze from my hands, he said softly, "Take your time, Mrs. Lillian. Your son is about to face a very difficult truth. Whatever choice you make, we will support you." He stood to leave, and I remained seated, clutching the edge of the chair as though the earth itself might tilt again. Evan was still outside, unaware of the storm that belonged to him. And as I listened to the fading echo of his laughter, a single thought settled heavily in my heart. He had shown me who he was in the face of illness. Soon, he would have to face who he truly was in the face of his own. From the small consultation room, I could still hear the murmur of voices drifting through the hallway, but now my ears caught every sound as if the air itself had sharpened. I had not made a decision yet about whether to be present when the doctor told Evan the truth. I sat there, hands clasped tightly together, trying to steady my breath. The silence pressed around me until a sudden burst of laughter sliced through it. Evan's laughter, loud, carefree, the kind he used to entertain strangers. It echoed down the hallway, full of confidence and charm, as if the world bent to him. But the laughter was interrupted by a cough. A single cough, at first, sharp, aggressive, then another, and another. He had been coughing for weeks, dismissing it as allergies or overtraining, refusing to see a doctor, despite the warning signs creeping into his breath. The shift in tone made the hairs on my arms rise. It was no longer a casual cough. It was deeper, lung-deep, the kind that sounds like something inside is tearing. I lifted myself from the chair and moved toward the doorway just as the coughing grew louder, harsher, almost violent. Then came a sound that froze me completely. A wet choke, followed by a splatter. I stepped into the hallway and saw nurses turning, startled, eyes widening. Evan stood in the middle of the corridor, bent forward, hands braced on his knees. His shoulders heaved as he coughed again, then a red stream burst from his mouth, splattering onto the polished floor. Blood, bright, thick, impossible to misinterpret. The nurse he had been laughing with screamed and backed away. A tray clattered to the ground. Another nurse rushed forward, shouting for help. The hallway erupted into chaos, voices overlapping in panic. "Call the trauma team. Get suction. Move her out of the way. Evan, stay with me." I pressed myself against the wall, unable to breathe, watching as my son's face drained of color. His eyes were wide, terrified, darting from one nurse to another, as if begging them for an explanation that made sense. He tried to speak but only gurgled, crimson dripping from his lips. Another violent cough triggered another gush of blood that splattered across the front of his shirt. He stared down at it, horrified, as though trying to understand why the blood was on him and not on me. A doctor sprinted to him, the same one who had spoken to me minutes earlier. He grabbed Evan by the shoulders, keeping him from collapsing. "Evan, focus on my voice," the doctor said firmly. "You need to sit down, now." Evan shook his head wildly, gasping. No, this is not mine. This is not supposed to be me." His words broke apart between coughs. Blood dripped down his chin, his knees buckled, and the doctor guided him down before he hit the floor. I took a step forward without thinking, an instinct deeper than breath. But a nurse held out her arm, stopping me gently. "Please stay back, ma'am. We need space." My body obeyed, but my soul felt tethered to the scene, unraveling before me. Another doctor arrived with gloves and a trauma kit. "His airway is compromised," he barked. "We need suction now." Evan grabbed the doctor's sleeve with trembling fingers, his voice cracking through panic. "My mom. She is the one. She is sick. Not me. The doctor exchanged a quick glance with his colleague, then looked directly into Evan's eyes. His voice was low, but unmistakably firm. Evan, you are the one who is sick. You are the lung cancer patient. The hallway fell silent for a split second, a heavy, devastating silence. Evan froze. His eyes widened, pupils shrinking, as if the world had suddenly become too bright. His grip loosened. He stared straight ahead, through the doctor, through the chaos, through everything he thought he knew. No, he choked. No, that is not possible. That was her diagnosis. That was my mom's. You said, his voice faltered. Panic crushed his expression, folding it into something breaking, crumbling, terrified. The doctor shook his head slowly. The diagnosis is yours, Evan. It has always been yours. Evan's breathing turned erratic, desperate, each inhale sounding like a struggle against drowning. He looked around the hallway, searching for me, searching for something familiar to cling to. Our eyes met. Just for a second. In that second, I felt the full weight of what he was realizing. He had mocked me, dismissed me, called me a burden, convicted me in his mind for a disease that was never mine. And now the truth was sitting on his chest like a stone. He reached out a blood-stained hand toward me, trembling violently. Mom, help me. My feet refused to move, not because I did not want to help, but because shock rooted me where I stood. After everything he had said, after the cruelty, the arrogance, the neglect, he finally called for me. Not Layla, not a nurse, not a friend. Me. But another coughing fit ripped through him before I could step forward. The trauma team surrounded him, blocking my view. I heard orders being shouted, medical terms overlapping, machines being rolled in. Evan's voice became faint beneath the noise, a mix of panic and disbelief. This cannot be. This cannot be me. I am healthy. I work out. I eat clean. It is not me. It is not. Another gush of blood cut him off. His denial shattered into raw fear. The doctor leaned over him, pressing a mask to his face. We need to stabilize you. Stay with me, Evan. Stay focused. Evan's head fell back, eyes glassy. This cannot be happening, he whispered, each word softening as if slipping from his grasp. This was supposed to be her. She. His voice trailed off as exhaustion pulled him downward. They lifted him onto a rolling bed, pushing him quickly toward the emergency wing. Nurses guided them, calling out instructions, clearing the path. Just before they turned the corner, I saw his hand reach out again, desperate, shaking, searching. And for the first time since he became a stranger, he looked like my child again, terrified, lost, fragile. Then he disappeared behind the swinging doors, leaving only the streaks of blood on the floor and the echo of a truth he could no longer outrun. In the empty hallway, I pressed a hand to my chest and whispered to no one, Evan, my son, but I did not know if he was still close enough to hear it. I sat alone for nearly an hour after they rushed Evan into the emergency wing. A nurse had offered to wheel me back to my room, but I refused. My legs shook, but I stayed rooted to the waiting area like a tree bracing against a storm. The hallway where he had collapsed still bore faint streaks of red despite the janitor's efforts. I could not take my eyes off them. They felt like the silent confession of a truth Evan had never prepared for. At some point, the doctor returned. His gloves were off now, his posture less urgent but no less serious. Mrs. Lillian, he said softly, pulling up a chair. Your son is stabilized, for the moment. He is awake. He is asking for you. My heart tightened. For years, he had walked past me, away from me, around me. Now he was asking for me. I nodded and let the doctor guide me down the hall. When I entered his room, I barely recognized the man lying in the bed. Evan's eyes were swollen with exhaustion, rimmed with fear. His hospital gown hung loose on his chest. Machines beeped softly beside him. He turned when he heard my footsteps. And for the first time since he was a little boy, his face crumpled the moment he saw me. Mom, he whispered, voice cracking. Mom, I am so sorry. He reached out a trembling hand. I placed mine in his, and his fingers closed around it with a desperation that drained every ounce of anger I thought I had left. Tears spilled down his cheeks. silent at first, then shaking his whole body. "I was awful to you," he choked. "I was cruel. I thought you were the sick one. I thought—" His throat closed on the words. I stroked the back of his hand as gently as I could. "You do not need to explain now," I murmured. But he shook his head. "No. I have to. I have to say it while I still can." He pressed his fist against his chest as though steadying a weight. "I treated you like you were nothing. Like you were in my way. I thought I was strong, but I was weak. I listened to Layla. I pushed you out. I laughed at you." His tears fell harder. "Mom, I am so sorry. Please forgive me." Forgiveness is strange. Sometimes it comes like sunlight, sudden and warm. Sometimes it comes like winter, slowly, painfully, each inch earned. But at that moment, hearing him call me Mom, without contempt, without distance, without performance, forgiveness came like breath. "I forgave you long before this moment," I whispered. "You are my son." He cried harder then. I held his hand until the tremors eased. We stayed that way for several minutes, not speaking, just breathing in the fragile peace that had finally returned to us. But peace rarely stays long in a life like mine. The door burst open with a sharp swing. Layla stood there, perfect makeup, perfect hair, holding her baby on her hip like an accessory. Her expression was not panic, not fear, not worry. Annoyance. Only annoyance. "Where is he?" she demanded of the nurse behind her, then spotted Evan and marched in. "Evan, I came as soon as I heard. Is it true? Is it cancer? Stage 3? Evan looked exhausted, drained, vulnerable. "Layla, She cut him off sharply. "Do not start crying. Just tell me what the doctor said." The doctor stepped in behind her. "Mrs. Smith's." She turned on him. "If this is as serious as they say, how long before his insurance pays out, and how much? I need exact numbers." The doctor stared at her, stunned. "Ma'am, insurance is not the priority right now. Your husband needs support." Layla scoffed. "My husband has always been dramatic. I need to know what his diagnosis means for me." "For me?" Even Evan closed his eyes, as if bracing for impact. "Layla," he whispered, "I am sick." She shrugged. "People get sick. Life goes on. I need security." I felt my chest tighten in disbelief. But the doctor spoke first. "Mrs. Smith's, your husband will require immediate oncology treatment, long-term monitoring, and possibly surgery. He needs a support system." Layla rolled her eyes. "I did not sign up to be a caregiver." The baby fussed on her hip. She bounced him impatiently and sighed. "This is ridiculous. I cannot do this." Evan's voice trembled. "Layla, please, do not leave me." But Layla had already turned toward the door. "I am leaving," she said plainly. "I do not have time for this." I stared at her, stunned by the coldness dripping from every word. She moved toward the hallway, but before she stepped out, she paused, glanced back at Evan, and delivered the final blow with a casualness so cruel it nearly knocked the breath from me. "Oh, and the baby," she said, adjusting the child's blanket. "He is not yours." Silence crashed into the room. Evan's entire body recoiled. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The baby reached for a strand of Layla's hair, unaware of the devastation unfolding in front of him. Layla smirked, not with joy, not even with malice, but with indifference. "I thought you should know before I leave. Saves us both time." Then she walked out, just like that, without a backward glance. The first blow, the second blow, the third blow, all delivered in less than 5 minutes. Evan's face was drained of color, his breathing hitched, his hand slipped from mine. "Not mine," he whispered. "The baby, not mine." He had suspected it before, but hearing Layla say the words out loud shattered the last piece of denial he had been clinging to. He curled forward as if the truth itself had weight, pressing down on his ribs, his lungs, his already fragile breath. "She never loved me," he whispered. She never. He broke. His sobs tore at the air, raw, loud, desperate, echoing the sounds he once made as a child after nightmares. But this nightmare was real, and there was no waking from it. I placed my hand on his back, unsure whether I was comforting him or holding him together. The doctor stepped out of the room, giving us privacy. The door closed softly behind him. Evan's grief flooded the space until there was no air left between us. My marriage, the baby, my body, everything is gone. I whispered his name, but he only folded deeper into himself. The weight of betrayal, illness, and the consequences of his own choices crushed him all at once. He had spent years abandoning me, but now he was the one abandoned. And no matter how much we had healed in the hours before, no matter how much forgiveness had begun to bloom between us, the truth was undeniable. He was breaking at the exact moment he was finally trying to come home. 3 weeks later, the cancer claimed him. He died quietly, holding my hand. He managed one last apology before sleep overcame him. But there was no time for repair. No time to rebuild the bridges he had burned. No time to reclaim the pieces of his life that Layla had torn away from him. He left his life the same way he entered mine, crying, reaching for someone to hold him. And this time, the only person left was me. 3 days after Evan passed, I was sitting alone at my kitchen table when I heard a knock at the door. It was gentle, almost hesitant. When I opened it, a young delivery worker stood there, holding a sealed envelope inside a protective pouch. His expression softened when he saw my face. "Ma'am, this was scheduled to be delivered after the sender's passing," he said quietly. My breath stalled. My fingers trembled as I signed for it. The envelope was thin, but it felt heavy, as if grief had settled into the paper itself. When I saw Evan's handwriting on the front, my knees nearly gave out. I sat down slowly, letting the sunlight touch the edges of the letter as though it were something sacred. For a long moment, I simply stared at it. A part of me wanted to leave it sealed forever, afraid of what regrets or apologies might wait inside. Another part of me, the mother part, needed to know his final thoughts. I opened it. The first line stabbed straight through me. "Mom, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and this time you can't tell me everything will be all right." I pressed a hand to my mouth as tears blurred the words, but I forced myself to keep reading. I have spent most of my adult life pretending I was stronger than I really was. I thought strength meant pulling away from you, proving I did not need you. I thought mocking you made me look confident, but now I know it only showed how weak I was inside. I was angry at myself for failing to become the man I imagined, so I made you the target. You never deserved that. My chest tightened. He continued. "I told the nurses you were a nuisance because I wanted to impress them. I wanted to feel powerful, like someone who had climbed far from where he started. But the truth is, I have always been standing on the ground you built for me, the ground you sacrificed everything to create. I lied about who you were, so I could lie about who I was becoming." A tear slipped onto the page. I followed Layla because she told me I needed to cut the cord, and I was foolish enough to think she was helping me grow. But she never loved me. She loved what she thought she could take from me. I see that now. And I stayed with her because I did not want anyone to know how much I was failing inside. There was a long pause in his handwriting, the ink slightly heavier, as if the next truth weighed even more. I have known for a long time that the baby wasn't mine. The dates never made sense. The features didn't match. I heard Layla on the phone once, saying things she thought I would never hear. I kept quiet because admitting it meant admitting my whole life was built on lies. I was too much of a coward to face it. My breath caught. I hurt you because I did not know how to face myself. I pushed you away because I felt unworthy of the life you gave me. You were strong in the quiet ways I used to mock. You carried the world when I complained about lifting a stone. You survived what life threw at you while I hid behind excuses and pride. I wiped my eyes again, hands trembling as I reached the final paragraph. If I could start over, I would love you the way you deserved. I would defend you. I would come home more often. I would sit with you, listen to you, and show you a gentleness I forgot you taught me. But life doesn't give rewinds. I hope someday you can remember me without pain. I hope you can live free from the burden of my mistakes. I hope you find peace in the years I will not get to see. I love you, Mom. I always did. I just never learned how to show it until it was too late. The signature at the bottom was shaky, uneven. Evan. I folded the letter slowly, my tears falling not from anger, not from the fresh wound of losing a child, but from something deeper: relief. After all the years of silence, distance, and cruelty, I finally heard the words I had waited for since he first turned away from me. The truth, the apology, the love he had buried beneath years of pride. I pressed the folded letter to my heart and breathed in slowly, letting his final words settle into the places where the bruises of the past still lived. For the first time in a long while, the ache inside me loosened. I stood up and walked toward the window. Outside, the afternoon light spilled across the yard in soft gold. The world felt unexpectedly wider, freer. The air no longer carried the heaviness of trying to hold together a relationship that had been breaking for years. I lost my son, I whispered to myself, but I found myself again, and for the first time since Evan was a boy, I felt whole. If my journey touched you, if it stirred something familiar inside you, or if it helped you feel just a little less alone, then I hope you will stay with me a while longer. Please subscribe to Grandma True Stories. Your support helps keep these memories alive, helps these lessons reach others who may need them, and reminds the world that our voices, even in old age, still matter. Thank you, my dear, for listening, for caring, and for carrying this story with you. Until the next time, be gentle with yourself. And remember, healing often begins the moment we finally speak our truth.